Hi, and welcome to Immersivism, exploring the potential of a virtual art movement. I'm Guillory, and I'm going to be the person giving this talk today. You may sort of recognize this same subject from another video on the Metaculture channel. That is an earlier video talking about the potential of uniting for a virtual art movement. This one's about what we do moving forward. But first, a little more about me and where I come from. Okay, so I'm Kay Guillory. I'm a writer and illustrator. I've been a professional artist since 2010. I write articles for Upload VR as well. It's uploadvr.com. Please support them. So you're like, what kind of art do you make? I make a lot, actually. Let me show you. Okay, so here's some of the things that I've done. There's a lot of different art you're gonna see over this talk. The left side is a comic that I worked on for a client. The right side is a bunch of acrylic paintings that I just kind of did over the years, especially when I was younger. A lot of these are just sold and gone now. But I am basically someone, when it comes to commercial work, if you have an idea, you come to me and I flesh it out and I breathe life into it. The book, the characters, the script, I can do everything. Even the outside book design, if you want to do something special, I'm that person. Here's another painting that I showed at Red Bull House of Art. It's not the green part of the outline. It is just the painting itself. I asked the original audience at XR Women when this speech was first done, what they recognized in a painting that seemed a little odd, and everyone pointed to the UI, which is correct. This painting is about using someone and playing them like they're a game. And it took computer screen. The idea of this was to take canvases and treat them like they were computer screen, and it would turn the viewer into the user. So I've shown at Red Bull House of Art, Con Artist Collective, and Satellite Show at Miami Basel, which has been really fun. I did a horror anthology called Wayward Sisters. That one won a Schuster Award, and it got nominated for an Ignatz, which we lost to the nib, but I'm really honored to lose to them because they were really cool. So I had a pretty good art career going, and you're wondering, why did I stop? Why did I pivot? It's because I noticed a few things that were happening around me during the course of my life. But let's rewind for a minute, and I'll show you where I come from. This is going to be pertinent to when we talk about VR later. This is my life in Detroit, and I'm going to show you this through a couple of snapshots because I think that it really brings the feeling of the city to you and shows you what I was looking at. So to the left, that's a street on a Sunday. If you notice, that's like really bare. There's no one there. That's kind of normal. This bus ride, I took a picture there, riding through the streets. Most of the time those streets were empty. It could be wonderful. A lot of times it was also bleak. So there would be places before the revitalization of Detroit, because these pictures were taken a while ago. The park on the left is not a park that you want to stick around in. It's really dangerous. That building behind there, in the shot, that is actually where a lot of parties are held on Halloween. There's a very special one you'll see in another slide coming up. It's called Theater Bazaar, and it's amazing. So it could be wonderful, but also sometimes it could be pretty terrible. Also, it could be just plain scary. I have neighbors, this is like the New Center Detroit area. It was not safe. It's so funny because it's close to the headquarters of the Detroit School District. In this picture, that big tall building is where the Detroit School District headquarters is, and it was really nice. But I don't know if they're still there, but it was just this juxtaposition of Albert Kahn buildings, gold lace interiors. It was very beautiful, but on the outside and just north of this area was just a whole lot of nothing. And this is not an area that you could actually hang out in after 5 o'clock. Most people in this area would go home. They would drive back to the suburbs, and if you lived in this area, you needed to go inside. This park is not a place that was safe to hang out in at all. You don't do that. So this is Theater Bazaar. You can see it on the left, and this is really important because Detroiters relied on art to create new worlds and bring people together. We didn't have anything, so we created what we needed. The city's art community is amazing. While that was also happening, I was starting to consume media like this, like Ghost in a Shell, Dot Hack, and its various spin-offs, etc. If you noticed the photo from a couple of slides ago, this one, that made it into a painting. Some Detroit painters were also imagining alternate timelines where its citizens would find themselves in wilder conditions. The paintings that point to this theme aren't many in numbers, but here's mine, exploring my home neighborhood. But this time I was like getting painting courses from like a community college because it was all I could afford. And I was going to these classes, and one thing my instructors would tell me is don't paint computer screens in still lifes. So I had to paint all this other extra stuff instead, and it was really cool, but it just wasn't my bag, you know? I asked them why I couldn't paint a computer, and they said just not to do it and that it looks awful. But I really wanted to because this is cute. Look at this drawing. It's adorable. Look at all this old tech that I would love to see an image of again. This drawing is from 2009. I love this drawing. I think it's very cute. And here's part of the actual thing, which is adorable. This was my early motivation board where I did drawings, I hung up sketches, and I just kind of like thought about the design of the picture before I actually committed it to canvas. So that was something that I was doing. I was doing a lot of traditional work. Later on in college, meaning like Wayne State, I transferred to Wayne State a little later on. I wasn't able to finish my degree, but I did start. Later on in college, I was trained to do blind contour drawing very well. So I went to Wayne State and I got a few extra courses in drawing. Blind contour drawing, shown here, is when you look at a subject and you draw them on canvas without ever looking at the picture. So it requires you to stare at your subject until you're finished drawing them, and you have to trust your eyes with what you see. This is a drawing of a coffee house. It is called Great Lakes. I used to love going there and just doing sketches. By the time I received the opportunity to show my paintings at Red Bull, is what you saw before, I was using Second Life and I was playing around with virtual photography. I had this additional life in art doing experimental stuff on the side, and I just never told anybody. And I thought that it was really silly because here I was becoming an adult, and it wasn't okay to talk about video games as anything other than entertainment. No one talked about their private life gaming online. But at the same time, Sword Art Online was getting attention, and all my friends loved it. I quietly explored Second Life's art community, and I never talked about it. But look at all these people that also were in the same space. Top left, Patrick Moya. He brought his paintings to Second Life. He started building out 3D work from there. Bottom half of that is Bibi Hansen. Great surreal work, part of the Fluxus movement, carrying on her father's tradition. She works with a group called Second Front, and they make really great art exhibits in Second Life. There's also, to the right, there's Dorian Electra, partying at Club Cringe, performing. So all these things were going on in that world. But this isn't the first generation of art. As I have said before, virtual art has come a long way. And here's Nicole Stenger from the 90s generation and her work. And then here's Bruno in the 2000s. Each decade and new immersive platform brings new achievements in design. So we get these platforms and we get these generations, and over people are diving in and they're exploring what's possible. By the time I was joining group shows in New York and wondering what was next for me, and by the time this is Con Artist Collective, this is one of their shows. At this point, I had gotten married and moved to Virginia, so life was doing a lot better for me. But by this point, the answer for what I needed to do next, it was sort of in my face. So this was a painting I did for a friend for fun. I had a spare canvas left over from Red Bull and all that, and I wanted to give my friend a gift. And we were both talking, we were both taking part in a Second Life art camp. And basically the way it was laid out was we were part of a group, and the art group got a parcel of land from a land grant, and we just kind of put down a bunch of objects, and the assignment was to think of something new to pursue try something new, just to experiment. Bruno is an accomplished virtual, sculptural, and traditional artist who's been making art in Second Life since the 2000s. And I knew her at the time. So when I showed her my painting to ask her what she thought, she then showed me this one. And then I looked at it and I thought, oh boy, this is the start of something. So this light bulb went off in my head and I thought to myself, if two artists are doing the same thing, eventually many more are going to stumble onto this idea. Not to mention the increasing amount of media I have been seeing that took place in virtual worlds in the casual way. Friends my age and younger were accepting that kind of media. And I thought about it and I was like, this is going to be a movement. So I pivoted to research how far I could take the concept of painting virtual worlds. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy. But as soon as VR became viable for me, I joined VRChat and I researched immersive worlds further. So here's some of the art that I created. Like I said, it was varied. It was, you can still see like the colorful way that I try to paint, but it was just very exploratory. And I felt like I was just kind of feeling around in the dark. So researching through blind effort is very difficult, and you're not going to reach your answer immediately. You will make bad art during this time. You will make mistakes and you will learn from them. If you want to make anything new, you have to fail before something sticks. It's always this way. You will make bad art before you make good art. Don't even worry about it. Just make art. Eventually, I realized that blind contour drawing would help me illustrate what I saw in VR. So using the blind contour skill on a virtual subject, it brings weight and truth to what someone paints. So I tried giving it a shot and then I recorded what I had. Now on here, you'll notice that I've got, okay, here's my quest. I set that up, I put that to the side. I've got this canvas with yellow ochre laid down and I've only got two colors over there. Burnt sienna. Why is it escaping my memory what that is? It's burnt sienna and then it's raw umber. So we're going to use burnt sienna to do the initial blind contour drawing while you have the headset on and you are looking at your subject. And then you kind of switch back and forth between the VR and AR interface and you try and tighten the lines and correct the subject lines before you paint it. And this was just my method that I found through experimentation, and it worked. It worked for me. And you just go back in and color, add color. And you can do an alla prima this way. This one's an alla prima, but you don't have to make it an alla prima. You can build this out. You can build this out to make a painting that takes a little bit more time to finish. So the Quest headset line was also improving with its pass-through ability, and Virtual Desktop let people turn the right builds into AR by using chroma keys. So I built this digital studio, and I'm going to show you this next, but here's the whole thing. Okay, you scan the studio using Polycam. That's what I did. I scanned my room using Polyam, then I lined it up in VRChat. What you do is you build a map. You have like a map file. You put the Polycam file in there. Try to make sure it's kind of low poly. It'll be fine. It'll work out. So you drop that in there, and then you've got like a box, like a green screen box that surrounds the build. And then you've got like a toggle button. I use like cyan trigger or something to flip the mesh on and off. And with chroma key enabled for pass through, look at how seamless that is. It's really trippy. It is so trippy. But that was the studio setup. So then the next thing I need is a subject. And here's my friend Regent Storm, who is a DJ, musician, and here's Regent Storm in my room. We just put it together and it was magic. And you can see I'm like looking at my hands. I'm like, now when we initially did this experiment, Regent actually just dealt with the green box part because I didn't have the scan yet. But this is actually how you do it. When you toggle the mesh off,
for pass-through. The model that you invite into your studio will still see the mesh, so they know where everything is. For Region, for this particular experiment, I told Region where everything was so that they knew what I was interacting with in the room. And Region just pulled up a chair and sat down. And as soon as we really got into things, it started to just flow very effortlessly. And I think that was the part that kind of shocked us both. I think that as I did this, it was very surreal and it was very cool. And every time I look back on this footage, it's like, this is so cool. Everyone that sees this footage is like, this is so cool. This is amazing. And I firmly believe that this is why I don't think of AR and VR as two separate, because you can have AR within VR. You can have VR attached to an AR experience. You can just make it seamless. Just like a lot of people say, I think that they'll always be together. And I think that they can be quite intertwined if you want them to be. This doesn't look like VR chat at all. It doesn't look like VR chat at all. So here I am. I sat down, I painted her, and then I did like a complete blind contour kind of portrait kind of, oh no. Oh no. Wait, let me put this back. Okay, there we go. So we did this like whole portrait, and then we did like a, drawing, a complete blind contour drawing, and then I just kind of signed it. And it was really neat. And then afterwards we talked about how we felt during the whole process, really wanted to get some feedback from one another about how this went. Because I think that when we did this, we both really felt the future just right there. And especially when Region pulls out her camera, that's when it really hits me. This is still VR chat, and yet it is not. And that just kind of makes my head spin. That's Region's Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. Please support them. And, it was so cool. But here's the part that really got me is when Region came in for a hug. When Region came in for a hug, that's when it really convinced me that this is fantastic. It's a great way to connect with people if they cannot physically be there. And it was just a lot of fun. I think it's a great way to make art. I think it synced up with my painting very well. I was very, very happy with this idea. And I felt like I'd finally gotten somewhere. With my work. Could not be happier with that. While I was experimenting with paintings, I was also enjoying virtual photography and studying digital culture. And as you saw the metaculture in that last little screen there, I wrote my findings at that site, focusing on the trajectory of VR's music community, because that was the largest art movement at the time in VR. And later on, as I got more into art, I shared my findings on the same website. And here are two articles that I worked on. It was pretty great. I wrote these around March, April. The VR music community that crystallized during the COVID lockdown, especially its rave scene around 2020, it went through changes I felt were important to note for predicting how virtual creative communities might grow in the future. So taking care of these communities, I feel it ensures its people are able to thrive within it. They keep making art, they keep making stuff, they invite their friends, keeps everyone happy. I believe that an art movement and a solid art community is what keeps worlds like this going. Then, by the time I stumbled across the Strange Prayer Art Gallery, I had been calling this researched art movement Gridism, which I named after Tron. And it was just sort of like piecing together what it stood for, which I felt was virtual life, its ideas, people, and places. And it felt like the impressionism of a new world. The fine art that fell under that movement could even be virtual worlds themselves. You can create a world, an immersive world, and intend it as fine art, and it will be. The Strange Pair was founded in 2022 by Oz Pearsall. So Oz has their own story about the Strange Pair. Immersivism, one of the greatest things that I love about it is that it is a decentralized movement. So I'm not the center of anything. Bryn is not the center of anything. Oz is not the center. We are literally spread across different platforms. We are spread across different places. There is no way to get in and try and direct everyone, because it's not supposed to be that way at all. And that is the beauty of it. Everyone can do their own thing. And I love that. I love that for us. The community space here, though, when I stepped into the pair and I saw it, you know, a couple of openings, and I saw how enthusiastic people were just coming in and you know, in crowds and crowds, and looking at the new paintings and the excitement of seeing what everyone was making this time, you know, it's perfect feeling. And it felt like Detroit, and I knew I had to give a talk there. So I talked to Oz for it, and Oz was like, you got to have it here. Once they understood it, it was just set in stone. So it was really great. I was very excited. This was the thumbnail for the original talk. And it, you know, I appreciate everyone's patience that attended, and we just kind of got through it together because I'm not very good at talks. The talk itself covered a brief history of virtual art. It pointed out how virtual art was an underground movement that's existed for at least 3 decades, but no one ever gave it a name despite it existing for so long. And I think the reason why is because A, we've been decentralized for a really long time, and B, when people are in different platforms, they're identifying their work and their time there as belonging to that platform. And I think that a lot of people weren't thinking about the fact that there are people in other places, in other virtual spaces, that are doing the same thing, and that means it's a movement. But now we have that awareness. So I got everyone together. I told them, vote on a name. I pointed out how long this has been going on. And we ended up picking Immersivism as the name. We released a poll. Oz suggested that we have it to where people can pick up to 3 names, which was a really great idea. Thank you, Oz. And so, yes, Immersivism ended up being the winner. Everyone just mostly liked that one. So I then wanted to tell Bryn, because at that point, I hadn't spoken to Bryn in years. I talked to her in like 2016. I realized what was happening. I got very excited. I started my journey to research as I was living my life and getting married and moving and doing other things that, you know, my life changes brought me. So then I wanted to inform her of the breakthrough that I finally had. And when I went to tell her, she had a surprise for me. About 4 years ago, Bryn released this talk called The Immersivist. And in it, at the very end, she says, virtual art may be written about in history books one day, and this may be the first stumbling steps to a new movement in art, not unlike the Cubist, Surrealist, Minimalist, Impressionist, and so on. Perhaps a movement may begin where the artists are called the Immersivist. She predicted it. Wild, wild stuff. That brings us to today. We have a name. What is Immersivism? Well, it's an art movement concerned with people, places, and ideas about virtual worlds. It could be painting, sculpture, photography, or 3D art, virtual worlds themselves. It could be physical. It could be digital. We do urge that people, if you have like virtual photography, for example, you should print it out. If you have a digital painting that you create in Painting VR or Vermilion or whatever, print it out. Make sure that you've got a copy of what you got, because it's very easy to lose digital files, just like it's easy to lose a whole virtual world. Alt-space survivors will tell you that. This painting right here is a Final Fantasy painting by Kikta, illustrating a memory of riding in their car with their friends. You could see the UI, you could see the name tags right here. Pretty great. So how does this help VR and immersive worlds and AR too? The immediate beneficiaries, once the word gets out about this movement, people get excited because it's going to eventually do that. people get excited and they come around to check it out. And I think the immediate beneficiaries are going to be the ones who are already creating the art, putting it on their walls. Like, it might attract buyers. That's my hope. I think that it's going to attract people that are going to want to invest in this art. And I think those are going to be the secondary beneficiaries. I think that we are going to see some very talented artists arise from this movement. I do not believe that we have seen our Picasso, our Monet. I don't believe that we've seen them yet, but I believe that they are out there and that they are going to join this movement and create some amazing stuff. So now that I've talked to you about this movement, we should talk about the educational potential of it, which means this art can attract residencies. This art can attract grants. This movement can attract educational opportunities. But if you want that, you're going to have to build a curriculum. My suggestion is to build a curriculum based on skills that are actually kind of hard to emulate, but can be essential to creating art within this sort of workflow that I discovered. And I think that my personal belief is that immersivism is something that has lore, it has community, and it's got crunch. It's got this technique. It's got blind contour that you can wear a headset and paint what you see inside the headset. That's difficult, but you can teach people how to do it. It's got 3 things that can make it great. And I think that it's got a lot of room for art historians to dive into, start researching all these artists from the 90s, 2000s, 10s, and current, and what they're doing. There's enough information, there's enough history out there to make this something that someone can just very easily enjoy a lot of time learning about. And then that's not even encroaching on the technique aspect of this. And that's not even encroaching on the subject of how to run a gallery in a virtual space and how to do so at a profit. That is something that you could probably talk to Oz about. There's a lot to learn, and I think that's what makes a movement like this enjoyable. In order to explore what an immersivist education would look like, let's take a look at a painting where I pieced together different skills that I discovered during my time of research. So let's look at a painting process that I documented. These are some paintings that I recently revealed at Strange Pair Gallery, and we'll talk about those in a bit. Now, if you know N. Preller's Horse Canyon map, I really am a fan of it, so I decided to paint a tribute to it. So as in the first tree painting demo that you saw earlier in this talk, my plan was to paint the rocks that I saw via blind contour and then use AR prototyping to complete the work. Let's take a look at some videos that show how that went. I'm just going to play these at the same time so you can just sort of look at them. Now first you see, and pardon the Guardian interruption there, I just didn't draw it wide enough, but as you can see, you can use augmented reality. I'm using Figment XR to draw so I visit the site, I took pictures, you saw that in the last slide. Now I then take this AR plan it out, I plan out the layout without ever touching the canvas. I just you can just draw it out. And you can use this with anything that's got a Google tilt brush and has a lack of normals, and then you can just sort of color match for the colors that you want. And you can use this to help you visualize what your painting is going to look like. Now this next video is where I actually went in, and what I did was I flipped back, just like in the earlier tree demo video. I would flip back to Horse Canyon, and I would look at the canyons and I would paint these individual rock pieces, and I just sort of fit them together as I wanted them to fit into the painting. That's how it helps. So it's not entirely accurate, but this is just another way that you can use blind contour to create a painting. You're using this to add weight to the rock detail, and you're using this to kind of get a sense of scale. That's very important for a larger painting. Then you can see on the right, I start laying down the colors, the basic colors, and then I use AR augmented reality to prototype and prototype and prototype rapidly until I get the painting that I want, which is this one. Looks totally different. And this is where I stopped and I asked people in XR Women, I asked them again, what do you notice about this painting? It is so beautiful. It is vast. It's pretty. But then there's this person that's standing there on the edge and they've got a name tag. And I loved putting this in Strange Pair Gallery, especially because people would come up and they would look at it and they would say, yeah, I really love the landscape. And then I noticed the name tag. And they had different reactions to it. Some people didn't like it and some people did, but it provoked conversation, and that's what I want. So the skills that you could build a curriculum based on this, right? We use blind contour drawing. We use rapid AR prototyping. We use plein air painting. Those three alone will make a pretty nice little course to teach people in a residency, in a workshop, etc., etc. You want this stuff. This is really good. It gives a lot of room for, it's not too rigorous. It lets people experiment with their own ways of implementing how to do this, but it gives them a really good start, and that's what you want. You want more development for this. There could be all kinds of ways to paint an immersivist work, but we won't know until more people are attracted to this movement and start experimenting. And this only covers one painting process, so imagine several different projects together with different skills highlighted for one course that lasts like a semester. I believe that this will make it to a university one day. Here are some, these are some rough prototyping pictures for the other drawing that I did, the other painting that I did. And I just kind of like really worked on it again and again until boom, this one. So I asked again, what do you notice in this painting? And people noticed that she was looking back, she looked feisty, but it was less people noticed that that's not a sign above her head, that is a nameplate. This is a model that I used. I did not use blind contour for this one. I just really wanted to do like something a little bit more illustrative and making a statement, but I did use prototyping with it, as you can see here. And this one, I've got like frames surrounding both of these paintings, and the message here is that at first when you encounter a person or a beautiful landscape, you are thinking about the boundaries of your headset and the frames that kind of surround your eyes when you're looking at these worlds. But then after a while, they fall away and you see the person. You don't see the name tag anymore or anything else. You see them. Now, these are some additional blind contour drawings that I did. This was an experiment where I worked with an iPad, which was a little more difficult because I can't feel the paper when I've got my headset on my face. So it was kind of blind contour where I would kind of peek through the nose hole while I was drawing this way. And I feel like it really captured a personality of my subjects, and I really would like to do this more. Here are some other programs that I think that you should check out. There's King Spray, which is going to teach you how to work with scale for murals. There's Vermilion, which is great for oil painting. Painting VR has a bunch of different media that you can try out. Gesture VR, I love for practicing like model painting, like drawing. Immersive education courses can also cover the art of publication around new subjects. Through the Metaculture, I also ran a community zine project, encouraging others to submit art, essays, and photography to be published. And the address for that is right there. Clout is a short horror story. This is another publication project that was personal. It's a short story about a virtual streamer balancing the demand for greater success with her personal life. I took the old fairy tale of the fisherman and the golden carp, and I just kind of worked it in. Clout served as a return to comics for me, as well as experimenting with taking on stories that take place in immersive spaces. And the research needed to make these stories believable is utterly necessary in order to deliver a sufficient punch. I honestly believe that. I think that if you want to make a story about cyberspace, you got to get in and live in it a little bit And then you can understand what makes this world go. As noted in these panels, which is really understated, but if you use VR, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The panel right before the top and bottom panels, they follow one another in this book. Here is this immersive experience. She's smooching a friend on the cheek. She's like, love you, babe. You know, they're about to part ways. And then she immediately wakes up out of this, you know, she's been using VR for a while and she's been laying down like some people do. And she's slightly like she's coming back to reality and seeing all this different stuff around her. I use the different styles to purposely make it kind of jarring when the heroine of the story is both in and out of VR. I wanted that on purpose because it can be that jarring. Publication projects don't have to remain in the realm of fiction either. Nonfiction publication can also see success with virtual residencies, encouraging writers to explore standards of quality stories to help develop their craft. Here's one I wrote for Upload VR about the next generation of VR developers being social VR users, and how I feel that we're really going to see a lot of great things from the next generation of immersive developers, whether in VR or AR. And I think that this will make a great residency for writers that are curious about writing things in immersive space, and they maybe don't know where to get a start. And I think that a residency would really help with that. So here's some photos that I actually took. Here's just like a bit of photography, playing with texture, playing with additional editing to try and create a nostalgic feel for what I'm looking at. And they're not always with context, because I believe that photos don't always have context to them, and they're not always well shot. And I think that the imperfection of these photos is what make them so sentimental. So I was really playing with sentimentality, textures, and a kind of longing, similar to the older photos that I put of Detroit earlier in this talk. It all comes back around. My parting thoughts are healthy spaces where artists thrive will not contain too much pressure on profit, nor so little that there is no opportunity to grow professionally if desired. I think that if you want to really pursue a good art project here, you should consider platforms with live building capabilities for hosting creative jams and residencies, like Resonite. When we keep the lines of knowledge flowing, each generation of virtual art improves. People know where they come from. They know who their predecessors are. They know about the techniques that they used. And because of that, they're not treading the same ground, and they can dive even deeper. It's what art is all about. Whatever you make, as I said before, print it out if it isn't physical already. There is no difference between a physical and virtual memory. A memory is a memory. When you can't find your way through a project, or something is stopping you from achieving what you want, this is a quote that I found online, just by some fashion girly. I follow like fashion girlies on social media, and I love what they post. Very, very beautiful. You know, they've got like the latest collections from designers, obviously, which I like looking at. But then also sometimes they post like these really, really adorable photos, and sometimes some motivational pictures too. And one of them that I saw was of Chloe Savini? I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but she was looking off towards the distance, very determined, and it said, "Nothing stops the dream." When you want to accomplish something, you will accomplish it. I came from nothing. I came from a place that didn't have any hope. I came from a place that if you were in the wrong place and time, you would die. And now I'm here. Obviously, there was a little luck that played into that, but also there was a lot of determination. I was not going to stay where I was. I was determined not to stay where I was. And that, I think, if you were born with a little more than me, I think that you have the capability to move mountains. And I think that you should take full advantage of that if you can. Move mountains. Nothing stops the dream. Don't let it stop your dream. That's me. If you'd like to find me online, I'm on Threads, Instagram, TikTok, I've got like a little underscore after the name, but it's KG Paints. If you find me on TikTok, it's like this silly little cat, and I've got like a bunch of ocean videos there. But I am there, and I do look at videos, and I will respond if you leave a comment. Please reach out. And thank you very much for checking out this talk. And I hope that inspires you to consider where art in VR and AR can go.